They said it was a car accident. But I was a detective, not a fool. Accidents didn't involve stripped license plates, stolen vehicles, and 4 men wanted on a federal manhunt. My wife, Claire, was walking back from her shift at County General, across from the gas station on Lincoln Street. Wrong place. Wrong time. Their black SUV jumped the curb trying to shake a cruiser tailing them through 3 blocks of downtown. It plowed through the sidewalk, slamming Claire into a streetlight before speeding off without a flinch. No brake marks. No remorse. 3 weeks later, she still couldn't speak. Tubes kept her alive, but they couldn't keep me from drowning in the silence between those beeps. The department offered me leave. Said I needed rest time. I said I'd rest when the men who did this were in cuffs or in the ground. Their names? Garrett Wexley, Dario Cruz, Liam Holt, and someone known only as Jax. Real lowlifes. Running guns, drugs, human cargo. The full buffet. They'd been bouncing between state lines, always 1 step ahead, always leaving carnage behind. And now, they'd left me behind a wrecked life. I moved into a motel a few blocks from the precinct. The apartment Claire and I shared felt too loud with all her silence in it. I filled my walls with case files, maps, red string, photographs, everything we had and everything I dug out of places no clean cop would touch. The captain gave me a warning once. Said I was getting too deep, too obsessed. He was right. I just didn't care. My first real break came from a gas station camera. The SUV had pulled in 5 minutes before the crash. Jax had stepped out to grab something. A 6-pack and a pack of Reds. Stupid bastard even smiled for the camera. Facial recognition tagged him in under 4 hours. I traced his purchases to a local corner store in Bridgeport a few days earlier, just 1 city over. This was the first time they were slow enough for me to get close. That same night, I followed up on a tip from an informant I used to bust heroin rings back in 21. He said Wexley had been spotted at the docks, Pier 14, arguing with some guy about a shipment going missing. The dock worker who overheard them disappeared the next day. I paid a visit to Pier 14. The foreman, a wiry bastard with a limp and a nicotine habit, played dumb at first, but a few names and a not-so-friendly reminder of obstruction charges loosened his lips. "They were moving something," he whispered. "Crates. Big ones. Night work. Said it was custom cargo. Didn't like the look in their eyes. Especially the tall guy, Holt. Cold, dead eyes. My gut twisted. I'd seen that look before, in men who'd buried bodies and never blinked after. That night, I broke into the manifest records for the port. One name kept showing up tied to sudden shipments, Kestrel Logistics, a shell company that hadn't existed 6 months ago. Their last cargo was marked as marine supplies. Departure, 2 days from now. Claire stirred for the first time that morning. Just a twitch of her fingers, but it was enough. I held her hand until visiting hours ended and promised I'd come back with answers. I followed the Kestrel trail to a warehouse outside the city. Abandoned from the outside, padlocked, overgrown. But inside, someone had cleaned up recently. Tire tracks, food wrappers, blood stains, still fresh. Then I found something that stopped me cold. A photograph. Water damaged, but legible. For boys, young, teens maybe, on a porch. One of them looked like Liam Holt. The second was Jax. I would have bet my badge on it. The back had writing scrawled in black ink. Me and my brother. Summer 98. J. My heart hammered. Jax and Holt weren't just partners in crime. They were brothers. That changed things. Loyalty made criminals unpredictable. Fratricide made them dangerous. I ran the image through old archives, cross-referenced with juvenile records. The truth unraveled slowly. Holt had been adopted at 14. His real name? Jackson Holt. Jax wasn't just his partner. He was his flesh and blood. And I had no idea what the hell that meant for the rest of this case. But I wasn't done. The next morning I got another lead, this time from an officer working missing persons. 2 teenagers, siblings, ages 15 and 17, had vanished a week ago. Last seen near the bus station. One had texted a friend, "Think we found a way out. Big plans tonight." Their phone pinged once near Pier 14. Then nothing. The port. Again. My chest clenched as the puzzle started to form. The custom cargo. The blood in the warehouse. The shell company. Missing kids. This wasn't just personal anymore. They were planning something. Something big. Something final. And I was going to be there when it all came crashing down. You spend enough years chasing monsters, and you start to recognize the rhythm of their chaos. Everything had a pulse. Even crime. So when the warehouse turned up with bloodstains and that picture of the brothers, I knew the beat was getting faster. Something big was about to go down. And these bastards were moving quicker than ever. I started sleeping in my car. The motel felt too far from the action, too removed from the stench of sweat, gun oil, and fear. I needed to stay in sync with these men. I survived on vending machine coffee, instant noodles, and anger. Claire's nurse called to tell me she opened her eyes for a few seconds. I couldn't bring myself to visit. Not yet. Not until I could look her in the face and say they wouldn't hurt anyone else. Instead, I sat outside the Kestrel warehouse in the dark, binoculars in one hand, Glock in the other. At 3:12 a.m., I saw them. 3 men. One unmistakably Holt. He had that same rigid stance as the boy in the photo, like he didn't trust the ground he walked on. Another was shorter, wiry, with a beanie pulled low, probably Cruz. The third was harder to see. But when he lit a cigarette, I recognized the face in the glow. Jax. The brothers were still together. They moved crates, quick and nervous. Whatever they were loading wasn't just illicit. It was urgent. I radioed it in. Backup would take 20 minutes. I had 10. I crept around back, climbed onto the roof using a rusted gutter pipe, and slipped in through the broken skylight. Every move had to count. I'd watched too many men get killed thinking they could handle more than they could chew. But I wasn't there to play cowboy. I needed eyes. Evidence. Something that would stick when I brought them in. I got more than I bargained for. Inside one of the crates was a false bottom. Below it, restraints, syringes, duct tape, burner phones, and 2 duffel bags, one pink, one blue. Inside the pink one, a school ID for Maya Denton, 15 years old, one of the missing teens. This wasn't just trafficking. This was abduction. Forced relocation. Maybe worse. I pulled my phone out to photograph everything, heart pounding. That's when I heard the footsteps. Someone else was there. But it wasn't one of the 3 men I saw outside. It was a kid. 14, maybe. Hair buzzed short, barefoot, pale, trembling, half asleep. "Hey," I whispered. "It's okay. I'm a cop. Are you hurt?" He looked at me with wide, hollow eyes and mouthed, "Don't let them hear me." My breath caught. "How many of you are there?" I asked. He held up 4 fingers. 4. I whispered for him to stay put, pointed to a dark corner. He nodded and vanished like smoke. By the time backup arrived, the warehouse was empty. The crates were gone. So were Holt, Cruz, and Jax. No sign of the boy either. No prints, no tire tracks, nothing but my own fingerprints and a camera roll full of damning evidence no court would take without a proper warrant. Still, I had momentum, and the first clear glimpse of how deep this rot went. The captain was furious, called me reckless, said I blew a months-long joint operation between state and federal agencies. They'd been monitoring Kestrel, hoping to bring down the whole network. My little stunt nearly burned it all down. But when I told him what I saw, the kids, the equipment, his face changed. "What are you saying, Bryce?" he asked me. "I'm saying they're planning to move those kids offshore, smuggling them through coastal routes, probably to the islands, maybe further. And I'm saying they're doing it in the next 48 hours. He didn't argue. I was unofficially pulled off the case. Badge suspended pending an internal review. Didn't stop me. I still had my gun. Still had my gut. Still had Claire's blood dried onto my wedding ring. So I started asking questions in places clean cops don't tread. Bars where the windows are blacked out. Warehouses turned boxing rings. People who knew how to make bodies disappear in the Delaware River. One guy used to run low-level boat jobs for Holt before he got promoted to child snatcher, gave me a location. South Basin Marina. Slip 19. They're fixing up an old trawler. Ain't no fish on it though. They're planning a trip tonight. How many people on that boat? I asked. He hesitated. Depends, he said. They've got merchandise. Kids. I growled. He nodded. 2, maybe 3. Last I saw, one was sick. Coffin, blood. My stomach turned. I gripped the table so hard my fingers ached. How many guards? 4, maybe 5. Not the usual crew. But they got guns. And Jax. He's on edge. Real twitchy. Keeps talking about blood, about fate, about not ending up like his brother. Weird stuff. Like his brother? I leaned in. What do you mean? He said, Liam's cracking, that he still thinks this is about us. But this ain't about family anymore. The statement chilled me to my core. Something was fracturing. I could feel it. The brothers were coming apart. And cracks like that, they're where justice slips in. The marina looked like something out of a forgotten postcard. Weather-beaten docks, paint flaking off rusted hulls, gulls crying into the wind like they were warning someone. Slip 19 sat near the far end, isolated from the other vessels. The trawler was bigger than I expected. Not a fishing boat, but a retooled long-range cruiser. Enough room for cargo, human or otherwise. I watched it through a borrowed pair of night vision binoculars from the window of an abandoned bait shop across the lot. The boat had movement. Shadows shifted along the deck. At least 3 men, maybe 4. One of them, broad shoulders, unmistakable limp, was Garrett Wexley. I hadn't seen him since the day Claire was hit. I tasted copper in my mouth just looking at him. A van rolled up the marina road just past midnight. 2 men climbed out, Jax and Cruz. Jax carried a duffel. Cruz had something smaller tucked under his coat. Neither looked relaxed. They walked differently. Jax kept glancing behind him, like he thought someone was following. Cruz's hand never left his side, fingers twitching near the butt of a concealed weapon. Then came the surprise. A third person stepped out of the van. Not a man. A girl. 17 maybe. Dirty hoodie, torn jeans, duct tape around one wrist. Her eyes were puffy, nose red. Maya Denton. Still alive. They hustled her toward the boat. She staggered, tripped. Jax reached out to steady her, and something strange happened. He looked pained. Not impatient, not annoyed. Pained. Like touching her burned something inside of him. I knew that look. Guilt. A gust of wind nearly drowned out the next voice, but I caught it as they crossed the gangplank. "You don't have to do this, Liam," Jax said. Liam. Not Holt. Not the hardened shell of a trafficker I'd studied for months. Jax had called his brother by his real name. They were splintering. I didn't have time to wait for backup. I'd already disobeyed orders, gone dark, broken laws I'd once sworn to uphold. But tonight, I wasn't a detective. I was a husband. And someone was going to answer for the blood on Claire's coat. I made my way toward the boat, cutting between docks, staying low. As I neared, I saw something that stopped me cold. Liam Holt was standing alone on the rear deck, staring out into the black water. He looked lost, pale. Even in the dark, I could see his hands shaking. I raised my weapon. My boots hit the gangplank and his head snapped around. "Hands!" I shouted. "Don't move!" His mouth opened like he wanted to argue. Then he just slowly raised his hands. "I'm not part of it," he said. "Wrong day to play saint, Holt." "No," he said. "I mean it. I didn't want this." I closed the distance, gun still trained on him. "Then why are you here?" His eyes flicked toward the cabin. "To stop them." I didn't buy it. But then he reached slowly into his coat and pulled out a phone. "Look." I took it. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. The kids. The equipment. Logistics. Even wire transfers. Proof. Evidence he'd been compiling. "I wanted out," he said. "I tried to get Jax out too. But he's too far gone." "Your brother," I said bitterly. "Some brother." Liam's jaw clenched. "You think I don't know what we are? What we've done? I never touched the kids. Never. I was the one who called in the tip. About the warehouse. About the boy you saw. I left the picture there for you." I stared at him, unsure what the hell to believe. My instincts screamed trap. But his hands were still raised. His eyes still glassy. "He wanted revenge," Liam said, voice cracking. "On everyone who left us behind. Me, the system, the world. But I think it became something else." Footsteps thundered from the cabin. Jax burst out, saw me, and froze. His eyes, wild, unblinking, met mine. "You," he spat. I didn't hesitate. "Drop your weapon." He smiled instead. A crooked, empty grin. Too late. Gunfire erupted from the cabin behind him. Not at me. At Liam. Jax turned mid-shot. The bullet grazed Liam's shoulder as he dove for cover. I fired twice. Jax stumbled, took a hit in the thigh, then disappeared into the cabin. I rushed forward, kicking the door open. Inside, Cruz was dragging Maya by the arm. Blood stained his shirt. He swung around with a snub-nose revolver. I fired first. One shot through the neck. He collapsed, gurgling. Maya screamed and fell to the floor, crawling away. I moved to her, checking her for wounds. You're okay. You're safe. You're safe now. Behind me, heavy footsteps pounded down the hallway. I spun around. It was Jax. Limping. Bleeding. Desperate. He raised the gun. Then Liam tackled him from behind, slamming him against the wall. They grappled, yelling, until I kicked the weapon out of Jax's hand and pressed my gun to his forehead. "Try it," I whispered. But he didn't move. He looked at his brother, bloody and trembling, and for the first time, Jax started to cry. The sirens finally came, first a low wail through the cold night air, then floodlights breaking across the water as cruisers and SWAT vans tore down the dock road. I holstered my weapon and stepped away from Jax, who sat slumped against the wall, bleeding and shaking, staring at the ground like he'd already vanished inside himself. Liam sat on the floor nearby, clutching his shoulder, blood soaking through his shirt. He didn't ask for help, didn't flinch when the paramedics arrived, just stared straight ahead, like none of this had surprised him, like he'd been waiting for it the whole time. Maya was wrapped in a blanket, trembling in the back of an ambulance. I stood nearby until her parents arrived. Her mother collapsed into tears the second she saw her. Her father looked at me and said nothing, just nodded, once, the kind of nod that says more than 100 thank yous. Wexley and Cruz were both in body bags before dawn. Jax was taken into custody, bleeding, broken, muttering about the ship that never sails and the house we never had. He never asked for a lawyer, just asked if they'd bury him next to his mother. And Liam? He waived his rights, told the detectives everything, gave up files, accounts, addresses. His confession implicated men in other states, even hinted at corruption inside the Port Authority. It was a spider web, and he'd become its reluctant historian. "I stayed too long," he said to me during transport. "But I never hurt them. Not one." I believed him. Maybe I shouldn't have. But something about the way he looked when he held that phone out to me, like it was a piece of himself he wanted me to destroy, told me there was still a flicker of soul left in him. I testified at the hearing, presented every scrap of evidence I'd gathered, legal or not. The feds didn't thank me, but they didn't arrest me either. Maybe they understood what I'd done. Maybe they'd have done the same if it was their wife lying between tubes and silence. Claire woke up the day before the trial started. Fully. Eyes open, hand in mine, voice barely a whisper. "You look awful," she said. I laughed harder than I had in months, then cried until I couldn't breathe. I told her everything, every detail, every inch of the man I'd become trying to get justice for her. She didn't say much, just held my hand and said, "Come home." I did, but I didn't go back to the department. Not right away. The press had a field day with it. Vigilante cop breaks case. Brother versus brother. Marina of madness. They had headlines for every version of the story. The truth. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't noble. It was just a slow, painful crawl through hell that ended with some kid safe, a few monsters buried, and the ghosts still whispering in my sleep. 2 weeks after sentencing, I got a letter. No return address. No name. Inside, a single photo. Jax and Liam. Summer of '98. Same one from the warehouse, but this time in color. And on the back, scrawled in shaky handwriting, "We weren't born broken. Just left out in the cold too long." I burned the photo in the sink. But I kept the ashes. Because some truths don't deserve to be forgotten. Only remembered differently. Maya testified, too. Bravely. She told the court everything. The cargo hold, the van, the fear. The way Jax talked to her like she was someone else, someone from another life, someone he'd failed to protect. He got life without parole. Liam, after months of negotiation and cooperation, received 20 years for conspiracy. The judge called it mercy cloaked in justice. The DA wanted more. I stayed silent. Claire came home 3 weeks later. We moved out of the city. Found a house near the water. The good kind. Quiet. Simple. With room to breathe. I still have my badge, somewhere in a box. Haven't looked at it in a long time. Sometimes I wonder about Liam, if prison gave him peace, or just another cage to rot in. Sometimes I dream about the marina, about that final moment when the brothers fell apart, when everything I thought I knew turned into something stranger and more human. The villain wasn't always who you thought. And sometimes justice came not in a courtroom, but in a frozen moment of hesitation before a gunshot. I still see Claire's silhouette in the kitchen some mornings and feel that old rage crawl up my spine. But then she turns, smiles, and it goes back to sleep. The case is over. The storm passed. But some nights, when the wind moves a certain way off the coast, I can still hear Jax's voice echo in my memory. This ain't about family anymore. He was wrong. It always was.